So welcome back since the kickoff last week. Before we start, did everyone get their account set up for the GARC education platform? And if you have, please log on now and keep that page open. So while you do that, and for those who had not joined the kickoff, I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Annelieke Laninga. I am a Dutch national, but I'm permanently residing here in India, in Delhi. And I have a background in administrative law and public policy. I am also the initiator of the Strawberry program and have been caring for community dogs for the last 15 years here. The Strawberry program aims to build local capacities, local groups, and connect stakeholders to have better management of the dogs and also promote coexistence. So we look at the human side as well, public health and public safety, basically bridging both sides. Okay, today we will discuss module 1 of the Global Alliance for Rabies Control Educator, the Rabies Educator course. The first module is quite basic, but very essential. And there, if you look at the WhatsApp group, a lot of myths were posted. So thank you also for being active on the WhatsApp group. And most of those myths are basically misunderstanding of what rabies is. So I think, though it is very basic, let's take out the time today and just really go down to the basics. What is rabies? How do people and animals get the disease? And I'm curious to hear at the end of the session if there was still something new, also something interesting, something surprising, maybe that you heard. And I also will make sure that at the end of the day, you will have a grip on this topic, plus that you have taken the module quizzes so that you're ready for the next module, basically online for next week. And as you know, the purpose of this study group is basically to facilitate your learning. And we will use the course materials online, but we won't reteach the entire module as such. We'll just go through these materials in an interactive manner today, and I'll share some extra visuals and extra information. And we will have exchanges. So basically, that's it for now. And I'm really thrilled that Dr. Hargun has agreed to join as a vet the Q&A session. So any questions that you have, put it in the chat with a question mark in front so that we can easily filter out those questions. And if needed, we can ask Dr. Hargun your specific questions if they're not answered yet throughout the session. I'm very happy that Vritti is again available today to keep track of the chat. So she will copy and keep track of all your questions also. And I ask you also during this session to use the emojis, the thumbs up, thumbs down, maybe some hearts or maybe some whatever surprise. We have a surprise face there as well. Do you all know where to find this in Google Meet, these reactions? Just take a quick look where they are. So then we can basically start. Before we really begin, I would like to get a little feel for how confident you are about your own rabies knowledge, basically. So if you could use the emojis and basically now show that, you know, I'm confident that I know the basics. Put a heart if you say, yeah, I know quite a bit already. Or just that surprise emoji if you say, I really expect some surprises and some learnings today. So just go ahead with your, so we have a mix of hearts, thumbs, and surprises. That's good. That's great. So at least I think there's some learning for everyone. Still, there's a lot of learning for me also in this in this course. I was quite surprised also to see certain information, and it helped me a lot. So I hope it will help you a lot as well. Okay, let's do a quick quiz as a warm-up. Use your thumbs up for true and thumbs down for false. I'll give a statement and you can respond. The first statement is chicken can get rabies. True or false? Oh, Ashita is false. That's correct. It's false. Only warm-blooded mammals can get rabies. Mammals, not birds, not reptiles, and not fish. Next statement, rabies spreads through blood. I'm just trying to see the thumbs up and thumbs, yeah. Mix again. This is false. Rabies can only spread through saliva. That's how the virus multiplies and spreads and transmits itself. Saliva, not through blood. The third statement, rabies can be cured. I think everyone knows that there is no cure for rabies once the symptoms occur. So you can prevent falling sick, okay? So once you're sick, when symptoms occur, there is no cure. But prevention is possible. Last statement, people can get rabies from a lick by an infected animal. I saw a mix, thumbs up and thumbs down. Okay, so the answer is it's true only if the spot where the animal licked, first of all, the dog has to be infected, right? The animal has to be infected with rabies. So the assumption is the virus is in the saliva. Then your skin may have a pre-existing wound. You may have a rash, you may have, I don't know, could be pimples, could be some small injury, a scratch. So the saliva can, through that pre-existing wound, scratch, open skin, enter the body. So the answer was yes. It's true that the person who was licked by an infected animal and had a pre-existing wound or an open skin on that spot can get rabies. But you understand that there's a lot of conditions and, you know, only in those cases. Okay, this was the warm-up. I would like you now to open the course online and through your login account, if it's open already, go to the course materials. Do I need to share like my screen to lead you there? Have you already basically tried to log in? Let me go to, okay, the link, first of all, you can find it in the group description. There is a link to create a new account, and then there is a login link for if you have already created your account. And then, okay, I'm sharing my screen right now. This is the login in case you haven't yet logged in. Take it from the group description. Log in, you'll see certificate courses in English. We take the English version, unless you have French native, you can take the French one. Rabies Educator Certificate is the first course in the top, on the top. And here you see the course overview, and then on the left you see course links. There you go to course content and take module 1 first. Some of you may have already started, but some of you may not have, and that's why I'm explaining it here, because you can just do the course only by attending these study sessions. We will take you through it. So if you're eager, you can do it on your own as well, but proceed to module 1, pre-module quiz. That's where you click, and I've already done it. So once you're done, put your score on the chat so we know that you are done. And then we can continue. Just take a minute. Just 1 minute. Completed. 5. Perfect. Yes, 4 out of 5. I think most of you are done right now. Okay. Sorry, I think you're all through. Great. So let's see how this went. The scores, I think most of you were quite confident already, and that's great. Let's now continue with the basics. What is rabies? What makes rabies different from many other infectious diseases? Can you say one thing, type one thing in the chat? What makes rabies different from many other infectious diseases? It can't be cured. That's one, it's 100% mortality rate once the symptoms occur. It causes a very painful death. Yes, it's definitely very painful. It's zoonotic. Perfect. That was what I was looking for. It's zoonotic. It's one of the few diseases that are transmittable from animals to humans. Any other? What else makes rabies different? Hydrophobia. Those are symptoms. Yes. Okay. These are the 4 things that I wanted to hear. First of all, rabies is viral. Okay, it's viral diseases. It's zoonotic. It's fatal, indeed, as you said, but it is preventable. It is deadly, but preventable. And I just want you to remember that, especially today, because there will be a bit of anxiety, maybe, when we look into what is rabies and what does it do. It is a scary disease. So today itself, I noticed that first module that builds up little anxiety in people and a lot of doubts and a lot of confusion, a lot of questions also, how to deal with this, how to recognize it, etc., how to prevent it when we deal with these animals. As we had seen in the kickoff already, the risk is relatively low, but the chance that you get, bitten by a rabid animal is relatively low, but the risk is very high because it is a deadly disease. So if the consequences are death, then definitely I can imagine a lot of anxiety. But I want you to also remember that it is preventable. We are doing this course so that we know what to do, how we can prevent it in the animal, but also in humans, right? So these are the 4 things I wanted to discuss briefly here. Good. Who can get rabies? I want you to actually tell me. I'm showing you the answer already. Which animals cannot get rabies? And type it in the chat. Dogs, cows, monkeys, chicken, snake, bat, cat, fish, and humans. So have you heard any animals that I mentioned that cannot get rabies? Dog, cow, monkey, chicken, snake, bat, cat, fish, human. Chicken, fish, snake. Yes, I see cows. Cows can definitely get rabies, and there are a lot of buffaloes, cows who do get rabies because they get bitten by dogs sometimes. So definitely cows can get rabies. Cow is a mammal. A mammal is any animal who basically is lactating. So its babies, so to say, are suckling, right? That's typically a mammal. So a cow also gives milk, as we know. So a cow definitely can also get rabies. Just not reptiles, not birds, and not fish. They're not mammals. Now, not all mammals play the same role in spreading rabies. That's also important to know. There is a difference between so-called reservoir species and dead-end hosts. So any mammal can get infected, but not all of them transmit it as much. Okay? So what's the difference between... Sorry, my papers have fallen on the floor, so I'm confused with the numbering here. Okay. So, what is the difference? What makes a species a reservoir species? Can you write in the chat something that you think of, like, what is a reservoir species? I'm just making you think because it's all there in the manual, but if it carries and spreads the diseases, yes? Carries and spreads the disease, perfect. So a reservoir species is called a reservoir because it holds the virus and the virus can persist. It stays alive in that host, basically. And it is also a species that then can transmit it to other species. So the virus multiplies. That's the aim of the virus, to stay alive. And the virus has to stay alive only by spreading to another animal, because naturally the host will die at some point due to the virus. And if it wants to spread, it needs to actually travel. So reservoir species transmit rabies so that the virus persists. So if we want to eliminate rabies, then we need to work with the reservoir species and make sure that they don't transmit it anymore, right? That's why we talk about dog vaccinations. Now, what is a dead-end host? A dead-end host, naturally dead-end, it says that a host, a mammal, who does not transmit the virus, doesn't pass it on. So basically the virus dies with the host. Okay, it's a dead-end host for the virus. Unfortunately for that virus, it doesn't spread itself anymore. It can't multiply. So those are humans, those are cattle. Cows usually do not spread rabies because, any idea why? I actually don't know the answer myself, but I assume that cattle is not usually biting, especially not humans. Yeah, they're herbivores, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they tend to not spread, but you can get in touch again if you have, you put your hand in the mouth of a rabid cow and you have a scratch, or you get a scratch from the teeth, you can definitely also get infected. So it's not that you can't get infected. Rabies is definitely risky and can be transmitted, but out of its own, it would not transmit it. So that's why it's called a dead-end host. So not every animal that gets rabies plays a role in spreading it. But, if all like many mammals can get rabies, so why do we basically, with global and national policies, focus on dogs? Anyone? Anyone? Any idea why we focus on dogs? Close contact with human, in urban areas, yeah, the biggest reservoir species. Biggest reservoir species, yes. Closest to us, definitely. Prejudice, yeah, prejudice maybe partially as well. Monkeys are also close, right, to humans. But then the dog bites, up to 99% globally of the human rabies cases are caused by exposure to infected dogs. So it's statistics that it is definitely the number one. 99%. I'm just looking up. If you can find other statistics online, definitely also put it on the WhatsApp group, because these researchers are refining, the people are doing studies. So this is being refined as well. But 99% is nearly all the human rabies cases that are basically caused by exposure to infected dogs. That's why these policies focus on preventing rabies in dogs. That will help both the animals as well as the people. Stop rabies in dogs, prevent human deaths. That's the thought. Okay, we went through the statistics of human rabies deaths last week, and I also shared an excerpt on WhatsApp, on the WhatsApp group, so I won't repeat that today. I saw that it was a problem with the link, so I'll check that. Did anyone else have a problem accessing the video recording? No? Okay, fine. I just wanted to mention here that apart from all these human deaths, many more animals also die of rabies naturally, because we get it zoonotic, we get it from the animals, and they have as much of a terrible death and suffer as much as we do. So just wanted to remind that we don't have any data about how many animals are actually dying of rabies, but we just need to remember that it causes suffering for the animals as well. And for families, for example, also who depend on them. If it is livestock or, a companion animal, then it's suffering for the family as well as, of course, for the animal. I wanted to show you this. This is the Human Development Index. And this is the map of the estimated human rabies deaths. Interestingly, what do you notice if I show you these two maps? Any observations? They're not identical. But is there a pattern that you see? Okay, North America is rabies-free, yes. You can see the white countries, Europe is rabies-free. Antarctica has never had any rabies. Some islands have also not had any rabies. But any other observation? North Africa and Asia, developed countries. Okay, yes, that is something that I wanted to hear. The Human Development Index, you can see tropical countries and the difference between developing and developed as such countries, according to the Human Development Index. Rabies disproportionately affects underserved communities, basically in Africa and Asia. It particularly affects people who are economically weak and also in rural areas. And that's a fact. And also a fact that indeed it was completely eliminated from most parts of Europe and USA and Australia, New Zealand. It brings an interesting question up that I don't want to discuss right now, but it's a question that if these Western policies work there, can those models simply be copied and replicated in our countries, in countries like India, with other completely different social, economic, cultural, and religious contexts? Because that would be a conclusion that you would easily draw, like, okay, so in Europe it's not there, the US is not there, look at the policies, copy it, and then we're done, right? Anyway, we may leave that for a policy discussion at the end if time allows. But I wanted to bring that up. Okay. How does rabies spread? Which one of these can transmit rabies? We already saw. I don't need to. It's saliva, right? Yeah, saliva. So which one of these are risky? Can you put the numbers in the chat? of these 5, which one are basically, okay, yeah, just go through it, put the numbers in the chat, the risky ones. 2, 3, and 4. Right. Anyone else? 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2, 3, 4. Okay, indeed. No risk, and that's what I explained earlier. A dog licks an intact skin. And these are all infected animals, if we assume, if it's an infected dog. Even if it licks an intact skin, you should wash it with soap, etc., and just like totally take precautions. But it's not a way to transmit rabies. A dog bites and breaks the skin, 100%. If it's an infected dog, yes. A dog licks an open wound, very clear. A dog scratches you after licking its paw, so the saliva is on the paw. It scratches you, you have an open scratch. Your skin is open, definitely the saliva can get in. You touch a dog's blood, blood is not the way to transmit. So remember, saliva and entry point in the body. Entry point meaning the skin has to be broken. Now, the incubation period. Imagine you're exposed today. Imagine, I hope, never, ever. And not even anyone you know, right? And not even anyone you don't know. But in case someone is exposed today, when will the symptoms appear? If they do not treat properly, that I have to say. 1, 2, 3, C. 1, 2, 3, C. Yes. All correct. Usually 1 to 3 months later, right? Again, this is important to know. First of all, there are, depends on bite side. Now we get to that. Very good point. Yes, I like that. First of all, there are cases where symptoms appeared sooner, sometimes even a week after the exposure, or cases where it happened much later, up to like even more than a year. It's supposed to be making, well, the statistics are saying. So once you have an exposure, you're feeling well, that doesn't mean anything. You're not safe just because you don't feel anything right after the bite. And the bite anyway is painful. But there are also other factors to keep in mind. First of all, the human exposure was what we just discussed. The incubation period for animals is usually a bit shorter, between 2 weeks and 3 months. But again, there it could also be anything like 10 days or a week to even 6 months. Yeah. And what can influence the incubation period? That's already something that somebody said. Definitely, there are a couple of factors that can influence that incubation period, and we'll get to it why in a moment. First of all, the location of exposure. If the location of exposure where the bite has happened is closer to the brain, the virus travels to the brain and affects the brain, and then the symptoms occur. So the closer the bite is to the brain, the faster the symptoms will occur. So your incubation period will be shorter. The severity of the exposure. If you have multiple bite wounds, there's a lot of saliva. That's the second one, amount of virus entering the wound, and it's not washed properly. A lot of the virus enters the body in multiple places, for example, or a lot of virus, like the dog is highly infectious at the end of the progressive period of rabies in the dog. There is also different phases in which the virus is more or less present. If it is a lot of virus present and a lot of saliva comes into a wound, there's a high chance that the incubation period will be shorter. For animals, to get to the incubation time in the animal itself, the size of the animal also matters. Bigger animals tend to be a little bit long, have longer incubation time. But the exact details on that, we can ask Dr. Hargun if you wanted to know, because I also don't know more than that. But this was a question that was posted on the WhatsApp group, and I was really appreciating that question. The question was basically that if the virus travels to the brain through the bloodstream in the body, then the symptoms should occur much faster. Yes, but the virus doesn't travel through the bloodstream. The virus, how does it work? After a bite by a rabid animal, the virus enters the body through this infected saliva entering in the wounds, through the skin. It can, by the way, I have to say, mucous membranes can receive saliva as well. You can get infected. Imagine that, you know, a dog or an animal shakes its head and all the saliva is going everywhere. And imagine that it actually coincidentally reaches your eyes. That could be a way of getting infected, not just the skin with a bite or scratch or lick through an open wound, okay? So the saliva affects, you know, there's an exposure. Say a bite, because there's mucous membranes, hardly happen. In the local tissue, the virus could remain locally at the site of the bite for a little while. And that's why we have time immediately to wash the wound and get all that saliva as much as possible out with soap. Rinse it under a running tap for 15 minutes is the device. And we're getting to that in the next module. So it is in the local tissue first. Then after some time, the virus enters the nearby nerves. There's a little bit of time there, and that's when we need to get the vaccinations done and things like that. But how quickly it is, then we need to ask a human doctor if they know that much of details. It enters the nearby nerves, and then it starts traveling towards the spinal cord. And through the spinal cord, it reaches the brain. And in the brain, the virus then kind of multiplies as well and causes those symptoms of rabies in the body. That could be multiple different symptoms. We'll get to that. And that it affects other tissues, because then the virus starts traveling through the nerves again, through the nervous system to other organs. It could be especially the salivary glands, because the virus wants to multiply, so it affects the salivary glands. It actually starts producing more saliva to be able to transmit itself. So that's a very smart thing of the virus. It actually affects the salivary glands and other tissues. So rabies travels through the nervous system, not through the bloodstream to the brain. Okay. Then, now we're getting to the rabies symptoms in humans. Early symptoms may look like many other illnesses, like a fever, headache, weakness, discomfort. There's also often tingling at the site of exposure, apparently. That's already something to be, you know, alert for. But anyway, once these symptoms occur, as I said, then you're too late, right? We're already too late. There's no cure, there's no treatment once these symptoms come, even the initial symptoms. As the disease progresses, you'll see the more rabies-specific symptoms, neurological symptoms. Then you see this hydrophobia. This is for humans, right? We're talking about humans. Yeah. Hydrophobia, of course, abnormal behavior in vaccinations. Even humans, this excessive salivation, we know why now, right? Light sensitivity. Insomnia, naturally, you can't sleep when all this happens. And then aggression can happen in humans as well. So there are these two different forms of rabies. Anybody knows two types of rabies? Even post it in the chat if you know. Different forms. Rabies presents itself in two distinct clinical forms. They have different symptoms. Okay, the aggressive form, yes, and the dumb form, absolutely, Raj. So we have furious rabies, furious, yes. Furious, one, and paralytic. Paralytic is the dumb one. Furious rabies in humans is 80% of the cases, and 20% of the cases apparently are the dumb or paralytic form. And in the furious form in humans, you mostly see this hyperactivity, hallucination, the extreme agitation, hydrophobia, etc. And in the paralytic form, you basically see progressive muscle weakness, gradual paralysis, mostly starting from the site of the bites. And I will give you these links. This is, for example, a World Health Organization site. There you can read more on also the symptoms, if you would like to. These links will be shared with you. Again, once all these symptoms occur, it is almost always 99% again fatal, but it is preventable as well. Oh, what happens? Okay, I clicked on the wrong. Sorry. I'm doing something wrong here. Yes, that's the one I wanted. Now the rabies signs in dogs, and that's something that all of us are very interested in, I suppose. Can you recognize a rabid dog? That is the question. We want to be able to recognize this, right, in the fields. And again, in dogs, we have these two forms. We have the furious and we have the paralytic form, and there are different symptoms there as well. But behavior change, a change in behavior, a calm dog, aggressive, becoming more aggressive, restless, or a more active dog becoming very, very lethargic, or, you know, like that, change in behavior. These forms are both neurological and as you see here, you can see the symptoms. Excessive salivation with dogs as well, lethargic, aggression, also hallucinations. They start, you know, seeing things that are not there, bumping into things, sensitivity to stimuli, light and sounds, paralysis in the dumb form. Abdominal vocalization is an interesting one. It's the cord, it's the vocal cord that gets affected as well. So that affects the fact that they can't swallow. But not all dogs have it. And that's also something to realize. My question is, does every rabid dog show all these signs? What do you think? No, definitely not. No. The virus again is progressive, so definitely there can be multiple signs also coming in. The same dog can then show progressively different symptoms, but not all of these symptoms have to be there. And yeah, as rabies can present itself in so many ways, you cannot easily confirm rabies simply by looking at the animal. That's also important. If you suspect a dog, if you suspect any of these symptoms are there, and if you suspect rabies, there is a protocol that needs to be followed. And again, Dr. Harwood can tell you more about it, but it involves isolation and observation of the dog to prevent it from biting or, you know, spreading the disease to others. So if you, you know, kind of suspect it, then isolation is the first thing that you need to think of. And there is more information. Again, there's a website here. There is also professional, they have a manual for veterinarians, but this is for pet owners. A lot of information that you can read. Not too much, it's like manageable in a couple of minutes. You can read this. So I'll share that link as well. Okay, so now let's make it visual. And as I said, it's not always nice. There are on the internet quite a lot of videos, and you don't get very happy. It also disturbs the mood. If you see, especially with humans, it's very, very, I find it hard to look at videos where people are shown that, you know, who have signs of rabies and symptoms of rabies. But I do think it is important for us as education to look at, especially the dogs. This is a 1-minute video. I'm going to play it, and I hope the sound will come through. Oh, what am I doing? Again, I'm clicking on the wrong link. Yeah.
Rabies is most often transmitted through the bite of an infected dog. But dogs with rabies can look quite different from what people expect. The dog is suspected of rabies if it has any of the signs of rabies in the alpha mnemonic. A. Aggression which is unprovoked or abnormal, including a dog that has bitten multiple people in a short space of time. L. Lethargy. Rabies can also present in a paralytic form, where dogs are subdued and lethargic. P. Paralysis. Dogs can appear wobbly or unsteady on their feet, or eventually unable to get up. H. Hypersalivation. The virus may paralyze muscles of the throat, causing saliva to drool from the mouth. And A. Abnormal vocalization. Paralysis of the throat muscles can also affect the sound of the dog's bark, making them sound raspy or strained. Rabies should be considered as a possibility in dogs showing any of the alpha signs in rabies endemic countries. It's important that anyone bitten seeks immediate post-exposure treatment at a medical facility. Rabies is most often transmitted through the bite of an infected dog.
Okay. So that was the, how do I get out from this? Oh, here, sorry. There is a longer version of this where you can see many more symptoms explained by the World Veterinary Services. And for your information, Stray Buddy has worked with the WVS Academy for creating this online course. It's First Aid Essentials for Community Care. So in case you want to do that, it's also a free course. And in that course, there is one chapter, very short, touch upon rabies. There is the longer version of this same video for 9 minutes. I don't have it available right now, but it's 9 minutes, so we can't play it anyway. But I can give you the link of that 9-minute video also on the chat. That is really worthwhile because it really shows some dogs in isolation though, and also free still, walking around wobbly, bumping into something. We saw that video during the kickoff of the dog that we had found in our city forest. Like that, there are videos of dogs 9 minutes long, and it's explained quite well by the World Veterinary Services, so you can trust these are definitely confirmed rabies cases. So I would suggest to watch that video for 9 minutes, which I'm going to put on the WhatsApp group. Now I have a question for you. This is a little video, also not even more than a minute. I'd like you to look at it and tell me, this is a lady who is, in her own words, explaining the symptoms of rabies as an educational explainer for people. She's put it up on the internet. And which of those things that she is mentioning are actually not signs of rabies? Okay, so where is this wrong?
Symptoms of rabies in dogs. First point, they will stop eating anything. इधर उधर दौड़ेंगे, पानी से डरेंगे, रंग हमेशा बाहर रहेगा और किसी भी अदर डॉग को अपने पास अलाउ नहीं करेंगे. Symptoms of rabies in dogs.
Okay, play it one more time.
First point, they will stop eating anything. इधर उधर दौड़ेंगे, पानी से डरेंगे,
Running everywhere, no water.
रंग हमेशा बाहर
Tongue is always
रहेगा
out.
और किसी भी अदर डॉग को अपने पास
Doesn't allow
अलाउ नहीं
anyone.
करेंगे. Symptoms of rabies in dogs.
Okay.
First
So,
point,
which
they will stop.
Which ones were incorrect? 1, 2, 4, 5. Stop eating food. Yes. See, honestly, I would say all of them were incorrect because dogs can still eat unless the vocal cords and the throat is totally affected. There are dogs that cannot swallow, but it's not a typical symptom of rabies when they don't take food. There are so many other diseases, right? That water hydrophobia is actually a typical symptom in humans. It sometimes happens again if the swallowing is affected, the dog can't take water, then it may not. But I've seen the dog that we had found just drinking water. Okay, so hydrophobia is not necessarily a symptom of rabies in dogs. Running everywhere, no. If you have a paralytic form, definitely not. It's rather wobbly. It doesn't always, dogs don't run everywhere. They probably are rather a bit wobbly on their legs, etc. And maybe even, just lie down more, sit down more. Okay, so a lot of these things were incorrect. And I know that people want to educate others. They've heard something, but it is also very risky to put videos out like this, right? Because now we think a dog does not eating has rabies. Yeah, another myth we have created. Sorry, I could not see the last chat. You asked me something. Can you unmute? Or Vriti, can you repeat it? Some question came in.
Ma'am, I just texted that dogs are afraid of getting wet, and it's not exactly hydrophobia, because almost every dog is afraid of water, just because we throw water on them to scare them away, but it doesn't mean that it is hydrophobia. So that's the main difference between hydrophobia and just simply water.
Thank you so much for saying that, because indeed that is so risky. We again will get a new myth that, we just throw water and the dog is scared of it because we're actually wanting to chase them away. And then we say, okay, see, it's a rabbit dog. Yeah, very, very risky again. Misconceptions are born like that. Good. This is an important point as well. Can we test? Can we test for rabies? Yeah. Okay. A dog can be given a blood test to confirm rabies? True or false? False. Yeah. Negative bodies in brain, huh? Yeah. Blood test does not confirm rabies. Right? There is no, it would be great if you had a saliva test, but there is no test, no laboratory test that can actually confirm rabies during, the time that the incubation time anyway, we don't even see symptoms. When the symptoms are there, also in that period, we can't test it. If a dog dies, we don't still know if it was rabies or something else. We can take the sample of the brain, and there are specialized labs who can do this test. Neighborhood Wolf, Dr. Hargun, who works at Neighborhood Wolf, has an arrangement. They do test dogs who die of suspected cases, and they have had confirmations of rabid dogs, but it doesn't have to be rabies, the cause of death. So unfortunately, it cannot be tested by life. Reliable information only comes through the lab test, the examination of brain tissue after death. Oh, by the way, testing of rabies in living humans is possible if the symptoms are there, not in the incubation phase. And therefore, when symptoms are there, again, we know there is no cure, right? The human will also, unfortunately, not survive. But it is a possibility, but it's very complicated. You have to have several tests done. Multiple different tests have to be done on a human who has symptoms of rabies to be able to confirm that it's rabies. And a lot of these tests are not available in India or not in a lot of hospitals. I don't even know if at all it can be done in India. So they're very specialized tests. And it's very complex. So basically, with humans, also after death, post-mortem, we can test it through the brain sample. Okay. Now, if we cannot simply test a living dog and know the answer, that will cause a lot of challenges, right? So what kind of challenges would you face in your day-to-day real-life situation? You may unmute yourself if you'd rather speak. Any challenge because the fact that we don't have a test?
One thing would be that if we have such a dog and we cannot test the dog, we do not know if all the other animals who came in contact with the dog are exposed to the virus or not. So there's no way to tell if there's exposure to rabies or not.
That is true. It would be great if we could do a blood test and we could see if other animals in that same area where we found a dog would be, affected or not, and then we can separate them and isolate them and make sure that they don't transmit it again, right? So what do we do in a case like that usually?
We vaccinate all the animals if we have a suspect case.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to vaccinate all the animals there. And again, Dr. Hagen can confirm whether it's sufficient to vaccinate once. That depends probably whether these dogs were vaccinated earlier, then a booster may be sufficient. If they were never vaccinated before, maybe a booster, like a series may be needed. And that's very complicated because we can't even know which dogs have been in contact with that dog that was found rabid, right? So there's a lot of challenges. And then how can we catch them? It's not always easy to vaccinate a free living dog unless we really know them and they trust us, right? Or if you have catchers with a net, and then still it's very stressful for the dogs as well. A lot of challenges, yeah. So no test, no treatment, no cure. Remember, it is deadly, but also 100% preventable. I keep repeating it. So do not get too over anxious, because if we know what to do, we can prevent it, okay? You as a human don't have to fall sick, even after exposure. Even if you are in touch with a rabid animal, you don't need to die, okay? It's very important to know what to do to prevent that from happening. And the same with dogs. And we'll get to that later. But I just wanted to give this quick insight. Of course, we'll get to this in module 2 also, much more in details in module 3. Vaccinate your dogs, prevent bites, know how to be comfortable around dogs, read their body language, wash wounds immediately. People don't realize how important that is. Then seek timely post-exposure prophylaxis, the vaccination series that we need to do, and also educate our communities. All prevention. All right, good. I think the call will also be disconnected soon, because sometimes these calls are only for an hour. So it's actually your turn now. Take 5 minutes and come back whenever you're done. I disconnect the call so that we can restart it. You need to log in on the same link, okay? And do come back, because we have a Q&A, Dr. Hagen Singh. But take 5 minutes, rehearse the module, go through it, do the post-module quiz so that you're all set with your homework. You don't need to do anything until next Wednesday anymore. Post your score again in the chat. Note down if you have any surprising fact, we can hear from you. And also if you have any doubts or questions. So maybe you can put in the chat something that was new, surprising, some insights you had today, or maybe a quiz question that you have a question about. Which, is there any doubts? So I hope you can see my screen. I'll just enlarge this a little bit and I'll read it out. What's the incubation period of rabies and what are the early symptoms? We've discussed that. Is it sufficient to vaccinate a dog once, or are repetitive cycles required? We will get to vaccinations in a later module, but what I can say right now as an answer is that the puppies, there is a regime for vaccinations, and there is a rabies shot that cannot be given very young. There are other vaccines. So the puppy regime, again, I can put it on the WhatsApp group, the exact regime. But then once the dog is vaccinated as a puppy for rabies, then it's an annual booster that is required. Okay, annual boosters to keep that titer up. Arti, I can't hear you. You were saying something? Oh, your voice was not very audible. If you have, okay, sorry. If you have a question, please type it. Yeah. Okay. Can rabies spread through ticks? Well, what's the answer? I like these questions. They're no silly questions. No, indeed. The answer, can rabies spread through ticks, is no. A tick, of course, sucks blood from an animal, right? And we have seen that the virus does not transmit through blood. So it cannot. Is it high risk for other dogs to drink? Yeah, that's the question I wanted Dr. Hargoon to answer. Can dog running a lot be because of hyperactivity and not rabies? Yes, absolutely. Running a lot. If you look at pets, they're hyperactive most of the time, and there are reasons for that. That's, in my opinion, a behavioral problem. But pet dogs are super hyperactive very often, and they don't have rabies. It's just a behavioral issue. Okay, definitely running a lot is not because of rabies generally. So yeah, another myth that hyperactivity is not always rabies. Myths. Kittens and pups under 1 month of age don't get rabies. They'd be dead if they had caught the virus. So there's no harm from an unvaccinated tiny animal. Of course they can get rabies, right? They will also die of it. They can get rabies at any point, and we don't know if they're below 1 month. They can get bitten as well. They may be carrying that virus and not have any symptoms yet. It's the incubation time. So I would not have I would not make that a statement that kittens and pups under 1 month don't get rabies. A rabid dog is always aggressive. Okay, I'm just thinking like about that 1 month. Of course, I think the logic is maybe that they would be dying, but generally when the symptoms occur, and the symptoms we've seen could occur within a week, the dog will also die within a period of a week or 10 days. Yeah, so theoretically, the puppy or kitten would have been bitten then very shortly after its birth. But I would just be very careful to say that they cannot have rabies. It's unlikely, but not impossible, I think. Okay. A question for Dr. Hargoon, by the way, it's an interesting one. A rabid dog is always aggressive and keeps running around biting everyone. In the state of the last stage, if you see the virus has progressed to the brain and the dog is basically in the very last stage, we then see a lot of aggression, if it's not a paralytic form. And that biting happens in that stage because the virus wants to spread. So all the saliva is there, it's very highly infectious. So that's the way it can transmit itself. And that's why it does run around, or it is disoriented and starts biting things, inanimate and animate. It can not just bite people. It doesn't go around just biting people, right? It just starts kind of biting. You see the dog bites a bar if it's in a cage. So it will also bite people if it gets to a person. And that happens in the very last stage. And very often hours after that, or within a day or so, the dog dies. That's mostly the very last stage, and a very dangerous stage also. Yeah, pour water to drive away a rabid dog. I mean, you can pour water and, scare any dog, not just a rabid dog, right? And, chasing them away is also not the right thing. It is better to stay away, but observe and monitor the dog. And if it's suspect, it should be mentioned to the authorities. It should be safely transported and put in isolation for observation. If bitten by a dog, one has to take 14 injections. No, that's also not correct. We'll get to the injections later, how many injections you need. By the way, I'll just give Dr. Hargun a quick heads up. Dogs attacking in packs are rabbits. There can be a rabbit situation. I'm not saying it's not a rabbit situation, but it's very unlikely that the entire pack is rabbit. Mostly there is one dog in a pack that then starts biting other dogs, and they can get rabies as well, but probably have an incubation time. So all at the same time, it can happen. Yes, it can happen that they were all bitten by a rabbit dog at the same time, and then the disease evolves and the symptoms occur at the same time. The whole pack is rabid. It can happen, but a pack behavior of a pack of chasing, for example, it happens that dogs are young, are crazy, are juveniles, and start chasing motorcycles in a pack, or do crazy things. They're not rabbits. That's just normal dog behavior. Can be uncomfortable, but normal. A dog wailing and crying has rabies. Not necessarily. Tummy rabies virus makes affected pups extra friendly. Yeah, that could be that you think they're extra friendly, right? That shows up later in the life stage. No, it will show up within 10 days that the dog is rabid. But if a puppy becomes very lethargic, there is something wrong with it, right? So definitely we need to be careful. And a puppy has multiple reasons for falling sick. There's these puppy diseases, parvo, distemper. We all know that they're very susceptible for diseases, and they become lethargic, and doesn't have to be rabies. Till its demise, a rabid dog will bite everyone. Yeah, but also inanimate humans, other dogs, also objects, totally unprovoked due to the illness. It is true, that is true. A rabid dog that is in that stage of progression and is in the furious form, has a furious form, it will bite. It will start chewing and biting out of irritation and agitation. Dogs having an uncurled tail, I think I already answered that on the group. That's a very funny myth. But a dog can be scared, a dog can be sick. If it normally has a curled tail and it is uncurled, we need to take a look for sure. Dogs that lose their appetite and behave strangely or aggressively, and slobbering dogs tend to have rabies. No, they are sick. They're sick, and it could be anything. It could develop into a rabies case if they have been exposed, for sure, but it's definitely not in all cases. And rabies is not that common. Mostly it's another disease very often, but still, yes, any change of behavior, if they behave strangely, aggressively, we need to observe and be careful. Afraid of water, we already spoke about that. It's not, hydrophobia is for humans a symptom that is quite common. And for dogs, it can be, but doesn't have to be. And always shows up as frothing on the mouth. Actually, that is true because the virus wants to multiply. So there's always a lot of froth or saliva. That happens with rabies. Okay, thanks, Riti, for putting that all out there. Dr. Hargun has a battery issue with his phone. Let me see. I'm trying to call him and see, but if his phone is dead, then there's no use to call him. Then we'll get him on the next call. We keep all these questions and we'll get him. I'll get him for sure. I'll get him. And he confirmed, he agreed. He does a lot of outreach as well, usually. So I think he was keen to join. Well, let's see if he can still come in the next couple of minutes, and we can still ask him those questions. Okay, I have another something for you. I'm not going to repeat what we all learned, but I want to have a little open discussion here and something to share. There is information on the internet. This is a very on the left side, rabies, that green one, is a very interesting explainer video. And I think you can share that with people who are interested in your education materials as well. So that one, the link I will share with you. It's, however, American English spoken. So it's not an Indian accent, but it is very much close to the GARC material. So I always assess that it's clean, it's proper, it's not like a lot of ambiguity. It's very clean and very clear. So that is 6 minutes and can be very useful for yourself and others to look at. We also had that question about basically the, let me see, the policy discussion. It's more of a policy discussion, that hoping that Dr. Hargun still joins. But until then, I wanted to pick up that question. Why do you think that rabies persists in some parts of the world, but it has been eliminated from other parts, as we saw in that map? Is there anyone who wants to say something about that now? See, I am, of course, a Dutch national, and I wanted to say something about the fact that you may have also seen in a lot of social media, it's very often quoted that the Netherlands was the first rabies-free country. Have you seen anything of that on social media? No? It shows up in my algorithm probably because I'm Dutch. Yes, somebody has seen it, right? Yeah, and it is quoted often. I think there is a problem there. We were talking about whether a model and a policy approach in the Western countries would be replicable here in another context, social, economic context, cultural context, religious context. Can I play this briefly? It's only less than 1 minute. Hope you can hear it. Oh, wait, I have to unmute. Unmute.
Cannot hear this one.
You're not here? You're not here. Okay, good. I will, thank you for mentioning that. I have to re-share my screen with the sound. Sorry. Stop sharing. I think I have monkeys here behind me on my staircase. If you hear any sounds, then the monkey jumping and screaming. It's raining, so they're hiding, I think, here. Let me go back to the presentation and Instagram here. This one. You should be able to hear it now. I'm recording this here from the Netherlands, a country that's often appreciated for being stray dog free. But here's what I've come to realize after having lived many years in India. This is not just a model that you can copy and paste. In India, dogs are not simply pets without homes. They're part of the ecosystem. They're part of communities. They're part of daily life. They're simply a species that fulfill a role in the ecosystem. And the coexistence that is a value based, deeply rooted in the Indian ethos, the cultural ethos of the country. Maybe the goal should not be to remove them or eradicate them.
I wrote a blog about this and shared that story as well as my shift in perspective. And I invite you to read it and share what you think. I'm recording this here.
Okay, so there is a blog about this. This is the blog, which you can find. I will share it with you. There is a link. Sorry, I will send you the link to the blog as well. Yeah, so there's so many factors to consider here. So many factors. If you see anything like that coming on social media, you have to remember that the country in the Netherlands had rabies as well. We had rabies, we had street dogs. A few centuries ago, there were big problems with the street dogs transmitting even rabies. And 200 years ago, a policy started, 200 years ago. In a cultural context, which I have to say is very less tolerance for animal cruelty. And this is another important point. If you have very little tolerance for animal cruelty and you're already looking at animals in a different way than sometimes what we see in India, this is also an evolution of 200 years, okay? It's not something from one day to the next. We had at some point a political party called Party for the Animals in the Netherlands. The Party for the Animals became a coalition partner in the ruling government. They were elected and they were in power in a coalition with other parties, okay? So if you see that cultural context, then if we get a Party for the Animals here in India, and we have them in the ruling government, in that setting, it looks very different, right? It will look very different to see how animal cruelty will be tackled. How in the Netherlands, there has been an animal police squad for animal cruelties, enforcing and fining people, a special police squad with special powers against animal cruelty. That's not mentioned. Let's just copy Netherlands and India, right? Fine, but do this. Have a political party for animals. Have a special police squad. Have enforcement in place. Have fines for cruelty. Yeah, we have, 40 rupees for animal cruelty cases still in the PCA Act, 1960. So that cultural context needs to be understood in which this policy worked. Then there was a multi-pronged approach. There was a lot of other things done with taxes, adoptions from shelters, homeless animals, disencouraging pets bought from stores through taxes and things like that, breeding laws. You have to understand this entire context. Then only you can say, okay, so the Netherlands did catch, neuter, vaccinate, return, meaning animal birth control. Yes, it did that. The Netherlands also returned them to the place, and therefore that policy worked, but in the context that I was just giving you, right? So, got to be careful by just saying Netherlands was stray dog free. Now we can also do it. Yes, we can, but India is also much larger. Netherlands is this small. It's probably smaller than Delhi NCR. It has less people than Delhi NCR. Keep all of that in mind when people compare the West and all these models and policies. So that's what I wanted to say. And on the left, you see there was an article yesterday published, and it's an old article because this lady Sindur Pangal is an expert on canine behavior, and we'll talk about that next week more when we talk about how do you prevent dog bites. Or maybe this is Dr. Hargun. Just let me pick up the call. I just wanted to, just give me a sec. Hello? So sorry, it was not Dr. Hargun. It was a urgency with a dog with a maggot wound that I have to resolve after the call. Okay, so I was showing you that article of Sindur Pangal, it published yesterday. She also warns that and that was actually an article written when the Supreme Court order had come out in August last year to remove all the dogs in Delhi. That was one. So she started writing this article. What happens if you remove a species en masse suddenly? What happens? And if you put them all in shelters and you overcrowd shelters, what happens then? Literally, you will get a lot more public health, public safety issues also. And she laid that out. So yesterday that was published. She was wondering also right now, she said it's great it's published, but the timing is not at the moment. Supreme Court has already spoken. So we don't know really what this article can still do, but it's an interesting read. So I would like to post that as well if you're interested. And that's linking back to my point when I said simply removing all dogs. I come from a culture where there is no stray dogs, but I would definitely promote coexistence rather than removal and elimination of the dogs, as they are a valuable part in the ecosystem on many fronts. And you all know it, I don't need to tell you. Okay, I'll get the Q&A with Dr. Hargun out of him as soon as he has his phone charged. It's too late now. I'm so sorry. I have to apologize. I had announced him. I was really excited about this. I'll get him on the next call. Another reason for all of you to join next week. And this was not a trick, by the way. He called me just before the session. He says, I'm out, I'm charging my battery. And anyway, he didn't manage. So next week, 15th of July, Module 2. What is Module 2 about? It is about how to avoid dog bites and prevent rabies. So we will go through it again together. If you found this useful, you don't need to do any homework. You can just come here. We'll do the pre-module quiz. We'll do the post-module quiz. You just join. I hope the interaction, I spoke a lot, but all of you gave a lot of inputs in the conversations also. Hope this was interesting. Would you like more of interaction that you all can also talk and speak and have examples shared? Yes? Fine. We'll build in some more interaction for you. On the WhatsApp group, by the way, you can also share your experiences if you wanted to in between. That's always good learning for others as well. Something you're struggling with, but also something that worked well, maybe, if you wanted to share that. I want to educate more people, so all that material can be useful also for educational purposes. If you wanted to share something, photos, videos, cases that you had, how you resolved it or did not resolve it, how you struggle, all of that I'm open to even put out through the Straybuddy channel so that more people can see it. Or if you put it out and you tag us, we will then reshare as well. So that's there. See you next week, and thank you all for joining for so long today. Bye.